Welcome to Season 5 of How I Made It Through, and thank you for joining us. I have invited Ray Catania, author, metaphysical teacher, and coach, to join me as my co-host as we aim to engage, challenge, inspire, and teach you, our listeners, what it really means to be a spiritual being having a human experience. We'll explore not just concepts, but attempt to unravel the neuroscience of metaphysics, as well as practices designed to expand consciousness, increase healing, and develop a profound connection to love. We'll explore God, death, the afterlife, and pushing past limitations as we encourage you to break free of the trance of fear so that you may experience greater freedom, peace, and connection to yourselves, each other, and spirit. So anything new?
Well, let's see, what is new? The guy I spoke with this morning, very interesting guy from Las Vegas. This is the second time I've been on his show. He practices, he's a Taoist. He says that he can channel Lao Tzu. Now, I don't know if he can channel him, but he certainly knows everything about him. But anyway, point is that this guy is very knowledgeable. He's been studying the Tao for 30 years. He's traveled the world. He's got celebrity clients all over the place, and he's also an energy healer. This guy is like the real deal energy.
I
Anybody
want to meet him.
Taoist, yeah, definitely, we will.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. Well, congratulations. That sounds like a real opening, a door opening there.
Yeah. Well, you helped me, so I'm helping you. Don't. What's mine is yours. Don't worry about it. Whatever we do, you're coming for the ride.
Thank you.
Of course.
I was telling Courtney that I broke my glasses. They finally broke, I should say. So now I've got these horrible Walgreens readers. And
I
when I
can't
put
see
it,
from here.
oh my God, I put them on last night,
They
and
don't work.
my husband was like, "You just went from 54 to 74. Never wear those again." I gotta be able to see. Okay, so she's an acclaimed. She's really impressive. An acclaimed author, inspirational speaker, soul healer, grief expert, globally recognized intuitive medium. She's been like on the Goop. She's been on, what's his name, James Van Pra's selected list of people he endorses. She's been doing this for over 30 years. And I just get a good vibe from her.
Cool.
When she was 4.5, she got accidentally locked in an unplugged freezer. Yeah. Yeah, that probably wasn't very pleasant. She died.
Oh, I've been there,
I know you had some unpleasantness.
gives me a reason to joke if I want.
Oh my God. What do you want to ask her? Where's your curiosity lie?
I think I'm like the path that I would take, or a lot of the questions that I get about mediumship. When did you know? Did you experience things as a child? Did you think you were going crazy? I thought I was going crazy, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Usually, and this, if this comes up, it does. There's usually trauma involved with mediumship. I don't know why, but everyone that I know that's a medium has significant trauma in their youth or before anything.
That could be a book right there.
Well, it is. I wrote it.
But I mean, even just thematically about the relationship between souls choosing trauma and then, how that connects to the life path of someone who has those kind of abilities and who's had an NDE. I think there's something really
I
fascinating
think
about that.
my first book, the chapter 3 is trauma. It's what's for dinner.
It's what's for dinner.
Trauma. It's chapter 5. Sorry, I'm looking at it. Yeah, trauma. What's for dinner.
So you and I get that. Isn't it beef? It's what's for dinner, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or was it pork? It's what's for dinner. Beef with people.
My house, it was fucking trauma. Okay, that's what it was.
My point is that came from a commercial.
Yeah,
People younger than us are gonna have no idea what that means.
Oh, true. Yeah,
you know what I mean.
They were trying to beat up the vegan people in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, exactly.
Susan's here.
Hi. How are you?
How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
You look beautiful, and your background is beautiful.
Oh, thank you. It's my living room. I love it. It's my favorite place. So this is where I sit.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah. Thank
Well,
you for having me.
we are so thrilled to have you. I was just saying, learning about you and reading about you, I was like, I just want to soak up all of her goodness and wisdom.
Oh,
And yeah, just thrilled
thank
that you're
you.
here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I loved when you answered the questionnaire. One of the questions was, is there anything off limits that you don't want to talk about? And you were basically like, kind of just trust whatever happens.
Absolutely. I'm a survivor of a lot of different things, and I've never been afraid to share that because it's helped me thrive. I'm better for it. Better human being, more integrity and character because of what I've been through, not in spite of it. So I'm open to sharing whatever you ask me. And quite honestly, you could ask me just about anything, and I'd probably be able to share on the topic. Not an
Wow.
easy life at all.
Love that. I
At
love
all.
that. Yeah. See,
But definitely a worthy life.
I
one
love
of
that.
yeah, no question. We were talking about that a little bit earlier, and we were saying I'm a medium. I don't practice, publicly or anything, but I've been in a long story. It doesn't really matter. But the thing is that in my entire class of mediums, everyone has one thing in common. It's always significant trauma. There's no one that's ever circumvented that, and that I've know of. That's a legit medium. It
I
just
agree
it
with
comes with
that.
the territory. I don't know why. Just seems to be that way.
Well, I think loss opens up portals inside of us to want to know more. And so we expand our awareness. And when our awareness expands, of course, that's part of it.
Mm,
The unconscious awareness is part
yeah.
of
Yeah.
that expansion. Yeah. But, I was a medium prior to. I remember seeing animals float. I'd be 3 years old. It's probably the only thing I remember about being 3 years old. And I'd see animals float when they would die. And I just didn't think anything. That was my normal.
Of
And I
course.
was comfortable with that. Um, but being locked in the freezer was a whole nother level of,
I was just sharing that with him. So I'll go ahead and read. So,
okay.
all right, welcome today. Our guest is Susan Grau, an acclaimed author, inspirational speaker, soul healer, grief expert, and a globally recognized intuitive medium life coach and hypnotherapist slash past life regressionist. That is a lot already there. Known for her genuine and approachable demeanor, Susan has a special way of connecting deeply with her clients, providing both guidance and comfort. Using her clairsenses, which I'd love for us to get into, she communicates effectively with the spirit world, helping to bridge connections with loved ones. With over 30 years of experience in both professional and spiritual practices, Susan offers a wealth of heartfelt guidance and insight, enriching the lives of those she works with through her sessions and public engagements. Welcome to the show, Susan.
Thank you
Welcome.
so much for having me. I'm just thrilled to be here. I'm honored.
Well, it's an honor to have you. As we were chatting, I think a good place actually to start is where we just were. Ray brought up, because he is a medium and has a community of mediums that he has worked with throughout his career, and you started by sharing you've had a very fulfilling but challenging life, and the relationship between trauma and those who are mediums, psychic mediums. And before we weigh in on that, I'll share my perspective, if I may. My
Please.
understanding is like older souls come into this lifetime and often do have these traumatic childhoods that open up empathy and deep learning early on, almost as preparation. That has been my experience with interviewing people and knowing people. But Susan, what is your perception?
I love how you worded that. I think that older, just to go to older souls really briefly, I've known a lot of older souls that have not done the work. And I know a lot of new souls that pop into this world. Maybe they've only been here a couple times that do the work. And so I see a vast, imbalance in that. So I do want to say that because, people think older souls just have the knowledge. And sometimes they don't do the work. They've just been here a lot. So older doesn't mean wiser. And in trauma, we have no excuse or no ability not to pay attention. It's a must have in order for us to get through the trauma. So we are present in our bodies in trauma because we are in PTSD. We're present in our bodies, not outwardly. And so I think that creates an ability for us to see more, sense more, feel more, experience more. because we have to in order to survive that trauma.
Interesting. Well, speaking of trauma, you had an NDE when you were just 4.5 years old, and you shared that you already had these abilities, and you can speak more to that. Can you share a little bit about that story and why and how that shaped who you are today?
Absolutely. At 3 years old, I remember seeing animals float when they would die, and that was just my normal. I didn't think anything. It'd be like walking out in the rain and saying, "Are you wet too?" That would be what it would be like. So I never asked anybody any questions. At 4.5 years old, some older boys asked me to climb up into a freezer in our garage, which we were not allowed in because it was not plugged in. And I climbed up thinking, at 4.5, you're going to look for popsicles plugged in or not, right? And I climbed in, and they closed the freezer door, they closed the garage door, and they ran home. And the garage was separated from our house, and my mother was in the what I would call the back of the house that's in the front, right? And I was screaming as loud as I could. And I was definitely, at first I thought I was in on the joke. I thought it was a joke, and I thought I was in on it. But then when I heard the garage door thud, I knew I wasn't. And I just remember screaming as loud as I could. I couldn't turn around. I was facing inward, and I was kind of stuck.
Oh, God.
And my arms were up in the air, which probably didn't, do anything but help my scream, because actually if you put your arms up, you can open up those lungs. So that was the gratitude I have for that. However, my mother heard your baby's in the freezer, and she ignored it. The first thing I remember is hearing 3 beautiful lights say to me, "Stop screaming." And I didn't. I kept screaming. I was 4.5. I was going to scream. And I was terrified. And then I heard it again, "Stop screaming. We're going to get your mommy." And this calm came over me that I can't describe. There are no human words for it. And the next thing I knew, I was at the bottom of this beautiful stairwell. And up above it, and I say well because I was deep, and up above it, I just knew inside this Roman Greco room that had pillars and an open ceiling that there was a dark well of some sort. And I thought to myself, how am I going to get up there? And I was there. And I was standing on the ledge of this well looking down. And most people say when they see the tunnel, for me, it was a well. And I was looking down into it, and I just saw this beautiful movement. It was like DNA. Of course, I didn't understand that at that age, but it was moving, and it was words, and they were intermingling. And somehow I just knew it was humans praying, asking for help, their heart's desires. Didn't know that those words then, but I said to the angels, "Where am I?" And they said, "You're in the room of heart's desires." And some other things happened in that room. And then I flashed on this yellow brick road, which was, I think, one of the most profound places I went to. I called it the Yellow Brick Road because I had seen The Wizard of Oz. And there were pyramids that were built with pavers, golden pavers. And there was a road, and people, humans, were making their road. They were pulling from the bottom of these pyramids, and I would watch it rock. And somehow I just knew it was their life journey, and they were unbalancing it. And then they started to pave their path. And it was bumpy and crooked and messy. And I watched, after a while, they would just drop to their knees and say, "For the love of God, please help me." And I watched these beautiful angelic presence come in and pull the pavers, put them back, balance that pyramid, their life journey. And then they go to the top and pull the pyramid or the pavers and start paving the path. And I said, "What are you doing?" And they said, "We are the pavers. You are not. All you have to do is walk it." And I, being 4.5, said, "Well, how do you know if you're walking it right?" And they said, "We bless or block everything. And if you see a block, you can get through it, battered and bruised at best, or you can shift. And if you see another block, you shift again, and another block, you shift again until you see us paving your path. And you will go through ups and downs on that path. However, we know what is best for you. You think you know what is best for you." My mother hears. She says it was between 20 minutes and 2 hours, and I believe it's somewhere in between. And she heard, "Your baby is in the freezer." And I was talking to her. I actually think that was my first lesson in learning to speak from the spirit world down to here and back up, is that I was talking to my mom, and she could feel me. And I knew she felt it because she would jolt. And she ended up running out to the freezer, opening the freezer door, and I was ashen and It goes
Oh,
from there.
wow.
I'm really just fascinated with the story. I mean, you saw so much. I love the fact that you were able to communicate with the living and kind of reverse roles. Now you're doing it the other way. It's like you almost can feel what spirit feels by having been there. So do you think that that aids you and helps you in your communication today? And if so, how?
Oh, absolutely, because I know it can be done.
Mm.
And once we know something can be done, then it's a matter of just getting rid of our limiting beliefs and allowing ourselves to do it.
Mm.
So once you know, you can't not know, right?
Yeah.
And so, when people say to me, well, you may be able to because you've had a near death experience, I can't. And I say, you can, and you will when you let go of the limiting belief that you can't.
Mm.
But right now, you can't know what you don't know. So let's give you some tools. So the goal is to fill our toolbox in order to do that connecting. And that happened to be my first tool.
Did you, once your mom rescued you, saved you, was it with you or did it come in a series of downloads, or how did you retrieve and hold on to that information from your
Both.
experience?
Both. And I love that you use the word downloads because I say that all the time. Oh, now we understand what they meant. Here it comes when I need it, right? When I came back and felt healthy, I could see spirits everywhere. And I was actually terrified. They were under my room or under my bed in the corner of the room, down the hallway. They were everywhere in my room. And I thought they were the boogeyman. And I would put the blankets over my head and say, go away, go away, go away. Just go away. And I did that for years. And people saw me as different and they just didn't know what they were seeing. And so throughout my life, I could be bullied easily, and I was very loving and kind, and I was different. So I shut it down, and it still came. I just didn't talk about it.
Mm.
And then it kept coming stronger. So I'd be woken up in the middle of the night. I just died. And I'd say, go away, go away. And I'd go, I'm going to go potty. And I'd go to the bathroom and come back and they'd still be there. No, I need to tell you something. I didn't commit suicide. My family thinks I did. You have to tell them it was an accident. And I'd be like, I don't even know who you are.
Mm-mm.
And oh, my name's, Sam. Okay. And then I'd hear, the next day, so-and-so's sister's best friend, Sam, committed suicide. And I go, oh no, that didn't happen. Let me tell you the story.
Wow.
And that's kind of how I lived.
Did your mom, was she always on board with this? In other words, did she understand what you were going through? Or was there a period where she was like, is my kid okay?
Well, I think she first thought I had brain damage because she had never seen that many spirits. And I kept talking about them. And she'd say, there's nobody here, Susie, don't talk about it. What I found out later was that my mother had a nervous breakdown. And later on, she told me that they put her on all these medications. I was really young when it happened. And she told me it was because she was seeing spirits and it frightened her so much. And she told my dad, and he took her away to a hospital. And so she was very afraid to talk about it.
Sure. Oh, that's so fascinating. That to me is the perfect segue then to this line of questioning, because you've got the family history and because you've been doing this for 30 years. What have you noticed in terms of the evolution of consciousness or the direction humanity is moving as you think through where you've been and where we are? I know that's a big old question.
Well, I think trauma is our greatest motivator for change. So pain and trauma. And this world right now is in a lot of pain and trauma.
Yes.
Confusion also. We are
Yes.
searching when we're in confusion. We're looking for the answers. And that gives spirit a perfect opening, doesn't it?
Yes.
It's like, here we come. And we're going to show you things and put things in you that because now you're paying attention because you need relief. The consciousness in the world is taking us to a place that I actually believe in the future mediums will be the go-to for grief work. As long as they're good and they understand grief. I tell my students, because I do teach, you will learn grief, you will study it, and you will fully understand the process, or you will not be one of my students. Because it is so important. You can't just set up house and say, I'm going to be a medium, and then someone comes to you in this deep loss and you don't know what to say and what not to say.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So it's so important. But the consciousness in the world has shifted so dramatically in every aspect that how can that not too?
Yeah. One of the things you said that keeps me hopeful is, in the future, the counselors who are helping you with grief will also be mediums. What else keeps you hopeful when you think about the future?
Life. When there's life, there's hope. And we have life here. I also know that our souls are never wounded or damaged. They are the vine to the spirit world, our souls. They are the literal vine. They pump the spirit blood. I don't know how else to say it. And the soul seats in the heart. Where would you go if your soul wasn't clean and spirit led? They created our souls to help us heal. And I've always been told by the spirit world that our souls are clean and perfect and ready to help us because they are the vine to them.
Oh, I love that. And I
I
have
like
such
that.
a
Yeah.
question. So when there's like past life harm, wounding, trauma, how do those two ideas intersect?
The spirit can be wounded. So you know how they say about horses or kids, just break their spirit and they'll behave.
Mm.
The spirit can be broken and wounded.
Mm.
The heart can be wounded and broken. The brain can be wounded and broken, but the soul is your healer.
Oh, God, that's powerful.
And so to me, spirit is the breath of life. The minute we take the breath, our spirit begins on this planet. Our soul always is and always will be. The scary part to me, soul wounds, when people say that, and I know a lot of people disagree with me, and I honor that. I can only go by what makes sense to me. But if everybody had soul wounds, I couldn't even go to someone else for help. They'd be too wounded.
Right. That's
Yeah.
right.
There has to be somewhere to go. And they've always shared with me, meaning the spirit world has always shared with me, that your soul is pure and they are the vine to that. And so if they are the vine to that, there's no wounds going in there.
It makes a lot of sense. Can I ask you, well, tell us about some of the early readings that you didn't know were readings yet, right? Give us one of those examples, because I'm sure you have many.
Many. So I didn't start doing this for about 15, maybe 20 years ago. I really started putting my all into it. Remember, I've been doing this since I was born. So I have 65 years of this. Right. But so the first ones would be things like I moved to Ohio and it's a beautiful place. Right. And this woman across the street decides to come over on a beautiful day. And I look at her and I say, "Oh, you're going to have a baby." And she goes, "No, actually, I'm going to get tested to try to figure out how I'm going to do that." And in vitro was just coming out. She said, "I'm going to go on this medicine." And she was telling me all about it. And I said, "Oh, no, you're pregnant." And she goes, "No, I've been trying for like 5 years." And I said, "No, you're pregnant. You're going to have a little girl in March." And she looked at me like I was a nutcase. She went to the doctor, showed up at my door shaking, and said, "I am pregnant." Never spoke to me again. She was terrified. She
How
never
old were
spoke
you?
to me. I must have been 30
Okay,
at
so
that
you
point.
were an adult, but she's like, this is
I was a witch, Who's this
yeah.
witch that lives by me, evil, and I got
Yeah.
told that most of my life, the devil's actually talking to you and giving you this information. And I'd say, well, if the devil's doing that, he must be a pretty good guy because I'm helping people heal and
Yes.
their souls are getting rejuvenated from the damage that's been in them. So I doubt that very much,
Well,
you
good for
know.
you, especially given your mother's experience that she was
Yeah,
experiencing it and she was so shut down and shamed and fearful. So
right.
y so you talk about the clairs and
Mhm.
spirit is telling you. How do you connect? And speaking of clairs, anything you want to share about that?
Um, So I use claircognizance. That is my area that it's just, I know. I know your mom's here. I know your mom was sick. I know your mom loves you. I know you had a good relationship. I just know the information, right? Clair means clear in French. So it's clear, clairvoyance, clear seeing, clear knowing, claircognizant, clear sentience, clear feeling, which cognizance and feeling go together. So I use those a lot. I'll say, I feel like my chest is hurting. Oh, yeah, my father died from a heart attack. I know your father's here, maybe prior to saying I feel. So those are the ones I use. They're efficient in my work because I work every week. hour after hour working with loss. The clairs are innate in us. We see, we feel, we hear, we know, just in daily life. So it's just a matter of expanding that knowledge by practice so that we can do it with the spirit world. But life is so fast paced that we don't use our clairs consciously. So we have to start consciously using them instead of unconsciously. And we can do both, but we want to use them consciously. So we're always in motion with them. So when I go somewhere, I can walk in a room and instantly know who's in that room with me. Instantly. You know, that's a drunk, that's this, that's that, you know, and am I safe? You know, because they're those things doesn't mean I'm not, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Very, so interesting. You know, there's a story in my book where I'm with my wife and we're at a party and she really wanted to go to a party, and I don't like going to parties for the reason you just said. And she's like, "Don't you love the Smiths and the Joneses?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, Mr. Smith is, you know, cheating with Mrs. Jones over there, but aside from that, they're wonderful people, you know."
Yes.
And I don't want to know these things,
Oh,
but
no.
they just come, and so.
But it's so wonderful to be able to tap into that and have that spirit knowledge so that you know what you're dealing with. You
Especially
know
like,
what kind of human you might be engaging with in the future. And, you know, do we want people who are, and the answer may be yes, I'm not judging it, but do we want people who are cheating on their wives to be part of our journey? Do we want them to be really involved with us in a deep way?
mm-hmm.
You know, that would be a question we could ask ourselves if we have that information.
Do you teach intuitive first before you take people into mediumship? Is that kind of
Sometimes
progress?
I teach the clairs,
Okay.
but mediumship, even if they're not wanting to be mediums, even if they don't have interest in it, even if they're afraid of it, it is the most powerful way to tap into intuitive hits and vibrational energy. So the frequency of the spirit world is extremely high.
Mm.
The frequency of the human world is very low.
Mm-hmm.
Vibrationally, both can be high. That's why we can't be perfect in a reading.
Yeah.
People want that. You know, if they're really here, they're going to tell you everything. I'm sure they do. I just can't hear it all. I'm having a human experience.
Yeah.
So I get bits and pieces. So having said that, it's important first, I believe, to understand mediumship and to allow, not learn it necessarily, but allow to get rid of the limiting beliefs and allow that communication to come through. It's just a conversation, trusting what comes into your head, then tapping into that intuitive space that says that's real or that's not real.
Mm-hmm.
So you're growing both in a very rapid pace when you learn that way. But for me, I found that my students tend to grow faster when I'm making a case for mediumship.
Mm.
Wow.
Do you think that all people can speak to their own loved ones, whether or not they're trained in mediumship or have that ability, or they think they don't have that ability? Do you still believe they can speak?
100%.
Yeah, I did too.
100%. They are always talking to us.
Yeah.
That's the spirit world.
Yeah.
So we have to be present. I tell people life is in session, be present.
Life is in session.
Yes. And if you can be present in this place, this space, this time. So when people say to me, I don't know how, I have anxiety and I'm looking at the future. And every time, you know, I'm worried about this, I'm worried about that. And I say, what you fear, you feed, what you feed, you perceive, and what you perceive becomes your reality. Projection is always fear of the unknown.
Yes.
And we can't possibly know. And we want control.
Yes.
And that's what makes us feel safe. But the scary part is that we don't have it. But the good news is, thank God, because we'd probably screw that.
We would screw it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's safe to say.
Yeah.
Safe to say. If you wanted people who are listening to take anything away, given what you know about grief or the suffering that so many, like you just exemplified with the anxiety, what are some of the pearls of wisdom that you wish more people knew or practiced?
I really want people to know that their loved ones aren't gone. They've just changed in form. And even though the relationship they have with them while they're on this planet isn't available to them, there is a relationship to be had. I want them to know they are loved and guided, and that we don't die. Death means forever gone. Death means done, over, finished. We don't die. But I will say to you that when they're done learning about this and they're done talking with their loved one, unequivocally, they walk away saying, I feel like I can breathe. So they are there for us. And it's just a conversation. We make it so complicated. So I hear in my head something. I don't say, I'm just thinking that's what they'd say. I actually say, thank you. If I'm wrong, they now know I'm listening. So they're going to keep coming, trying that way. So I've now opened a pathway for them and a doorway. So it doesn't matter whether I'm right or wrong at that moment. It matters that I open that pathway. And then they go, oh, she's going to listen by my thinking. So I'm going to give it to her that way. And then before you know it, you're getting all kinds of connection. And it's that way with anything.
It is. Yeah. Yeah.
You've written a book, or you have one coming out, or both?
I have an ebook that is received if they pre-order for my book. They get the ebook, which is great. It is so informative about everything we just talked about. But my book, Infinite Life, Infinite Lessons, Wisdom from the Spirit World on Living, Dying, and the In-Between. And it's coming out July 16th. But with the pre-order, which I think is going to be amazing, I'm doing 13 once a month readings on Zoom with pre-order people so that we can go over the book.
Oh, nice.
So we're going to do one chapter a month for 13 months.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I love that.
You have such a gift in terms of just your speaking ability. You know, you have a beautiful quality of your voice. You explain things so beautifully. Some of the metaphors and the analogies have just been so instructive. How can people contact you and learn from you and have a reading or whatever feels right in terms of the services you offer?
SusanGrau.com is how they can find me, or on any social media, Susan Grau Official.
Okay.
And then, of course, you know, they can call me, but they'll find all of that information on SusanGrau.com, and they can read about my story a little bit, and that'll be of help to them.
Okay.
But my goal is to help people believe what they are so afraid of, and that is spirits do exist.
So you get to the other side after this lifetime as Susan Grau. How will you know it was a life very well lived?
I really believe that when we cross over, a life well lived is the fact that we were willing to come here in the first place and do this very difficult journey. And we're very brave. So when I passed away, they were taking people, everyone that was crossing over, no matter how they died, and patting them and saying, good job, you're so brave. You're so brave. So I think we just know innately coming here is a life well led or well lived.
Yeah. I love that. That's so magnanimous because we get so trapped in judgment, but to recognize that each of us here are on a courageous journey, and that in and of itself is worthy of note. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing the wisdom of your thoughts and your presence and your love. It's just exquisite. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I'm so grateful.
How I Made It Through is produced and distributed by EIQ Media, LLC. Elevate your emotional IQ with podcasts and content focused on overcoming adversity, leadership, mental health, entrepreneurship, spiritually transformative experiences, and more.